I do not think y'all are ready for this conversation. This is what your therapist will not tell you, but it's true. And it's holding you back. Hey there, kings and queens. Welcome back to another episode of Faith Helps Podcast, where we bridge the gap between faith and psychology, all in the effort to show you that you need both in order to become the best version of yourself. Now, by best version of yourself, I mean the version that God intended you to be. It is my hope that you leave every episode feeling encouraged, inspired, healed in some area of your life, but most importantly, challenged to continue working towards that best version of yourself. And today's no different. I'm your host, Dr. Diamond Booth, and I'm so glad that you tuned in. Ooh, let's get it. So I don't even know if we're ready for this conversation. Because I've been wrestling up until this point of sharing, something, because it provides the context for this conversation we're about to have. As you see, like, the title is about breakups, but it may not be the type of breakup you're thinking about. But in order to jump into that, I do want to preface it with where this topic, this idea, this thought came from. Ooh! Can't believe. All right. So I'm gonna expose myself a little bit. And it's all good because, his word says, by our testimonies we are healed. It says by our stripes. By his stripes we are healed. But there's something in there about testimonies and being delivered by it. So I'm gonna go ahead and share mine. But in all seriousness, I do think there is a lot of value when we share our testimonies, and it helps and it uplifts others, but also it kind of evens the playing field, so we remember that we're all human and we're not idolizing people as if they don't have any flaws or sins. So with that being said, something that I realized that I do, my not so healthy trait, is related to All right. Let's rewind. First off, let me preface this with I am a single woman. Now, that does not justify all behavior, but I just feel like I want to throw that out there for y'all. Start saying, "Oh, don't do me like that." But I notice I have this tendency to look and scroll at night. As the kids say nowadays, it's doom scrolling, and there are a few fine specimens that I tend to like indulging myself in their content, and just admiring not just their handsomeness and those workout videos they be posting, but also their mind, and listen to them speak, how the way they talk and like how they think. That is like one of the most attractive things and can easily be a turnoff for me, is how someone thinks. So needless to say, Holy Spirit rolled up in my DMs and was like, we need to deal with that. And I was like, I don't want to change that. I don't, what was it? And though I'm making light of the situation, in all seriousness, what I felt Holy Spirit kind of talking with me about last night is not just unhealthy or unfruitful and unproductive habits, but this overall tendency that we have as a generation to become so attached to our habits that we refuse to change. And that led me to this topic that I want to talk about. And I realized this a lot with my clients, and it looks differently from that. That's like a somewhat benign example, so to speak. But at the end of the day, less is less, so we need to go ahead and deal with that. But on the other hand, on a more global perspective, there are certain things that people tend to have a really hard time breaking up with. And I like to just use the umbrella term for the purpose of this episode of the old version of ourselves. Like, let's just call those habits, those behaviors, those tendencies, whatever it might be, we're just going to refer to them as the old version of ourselves. Now, every year, people say new year, new me, right? And we are so excited for the future. We're so excited for the growth. We're so excited for the glow up, the elevation and all that. And very seldom do we hear people talking about grieving the old versions of ourselves. And I use the term grief because there is a level of attachment to that. When it comes to any habit, any behavior, any tendency you have that you're trying to change, there is a part of you that needs to grieve it. The reason why is because if we're honest with ourselves, that version of ourselves existed to ultimately help us to survive. And one thing that I see a lot with my clients when they come to this point of tension, when they have to decide, am I going to choose these new healthier habits or am I going to keep going along the path that I've been doing? It's a wrestle because they have to choose between the unknown, because though something might be healthier, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be comfortable going into it because you don't know what that's going to look like. Healing sounds beautiful. It sounds great, but the actual process of it gets messy. It gets dirty. It gets painful. And that is a lot scarier than let me just go ahead and continue what I was doing because at least the way that I have been going has allowed me to survive. Right? So, for example, instead of someone might really want to stop the habit of, shrinking themselves, right? They want to stop the habit of, being very passive and shy, and they want to be more outspoken, more confident. Well, if you rewind back in their life a bit, they learned that behavior from somewhere for some reason. In the past, perhaps being more meek, being more reserved, being quiet, making yourself small protected you from unwanted attention. It protected you from being chastised. It protected you from people making fun of you or bullying you. And so at that time, you had to learn, in order to survive, I need to become this. Because when I am outspoken, when I am confident, I get attacked. So now let me just shy away, and now people aren't focused on me. I hope that makes sense. So that's an example. Another example, say someone is really struggling with selfishness, right? Maybe this person is like super selfish. Maybe you are struggling with selfishness and you are quick to say, you know what? I am going to cut people off if they aren't a benefit to me. I'm not going to allow anyone access to me unless there's something I'm getting out. I'm not giving out what I have. I'm always going to make sure I eat first. Like that type of mentality. That may sound, in today's culture, that would be glorified. That would be commendable, to be honest, because that's the type of society and culture we live in. But let's look at where that root came from. The root of that may have been, when I was generous, people took advantage of it. When I was the type of person who gave chance after chance after chance, I kept getting hurt. I kept getting betrayed. I kept getting disappointed. And so, now my heart is a little harder and I'm less likely to keep giving people chances. So now it's one and done and you're out of here. Now I'm not going to give my last for someone because no one ever gave their last for me. And so we built this mentality off of ultimately learn how to survive. And it worked at that time. It worked to get you to where you are today. It served its purpose. That version of you succeeded in the goal. And that goal was to keep you alive, to keep you protected, and to keep you safe, right? However, as we continue to grow, as we continue to mature, those past habits, that old version of ourselves, cannot sustain where God is trying to take us and where you're trying to go. So I used my example of quote unquote doom scrolling and just looking at these pictures of, attractive guys that I have crushes on and stuff like that, and scrolling through their Instagram and all that, right? Now, if I'm honest, that is forming a habit right now in my singleness. in my season of singleness that I'm going to have to deal with later if I don't check it now, if I don't watch it now. Now, someone may say, that's not that serious. It is that serious because I just finished, I didn't just finish, but I've been reading the book Outwitting the Devil. And one of the things, it's a really good read if you haven't. Like, oh my gosh, chapter 3 and 4, bomb, read it. But in the video, in the book, the author talks about this interview with the devil. It's by Napoleon Hill. And he gives the example of like the devil talks about drifting and how people drift into darker entanglement with unhealthy habits, patterns. He used the example of like cigarettes and liquor and, sex and all those other things that, it's right. If we look at our world and look at development over the lifespan, typically those things are adrift. It starts off with just doom scrolling and, oh, he's cute, right? Then it turns into, well, now I'm horny and I'm not just doom scrolling. Now I'm lusting. Now I'm drooling. Now my hormones are a little bit stronger and I'm going to go ahead and, watch some porn now. And it happens gradually. Next thing you know, I'm out here in the streets and that's what y'all not going to catch me doing. So that's why I use that example, because it seems benign now, but and it seems like, oh, well, everyone's doing it and it's not that serious. At least I'm not doing X, Y, Z. Oh, but baby, this is just as serious because you're creating a pathway for you to drift further and further away from your focus and your purpose. Because ultimately, these patterns that we have now, these behaviors that we have now, this version of ourselves that we are existing with now is not going to serve us in the future. Whether it is an actual like habit, an addiction, whether it's a mentality or mindset, whether it's an emotion, because sometimes we build up patterns of dealing with certain emotions that is super unhealthy, like constantly suppressing anger and trying to be overly positive, and we never allow that anger to breathe and process it in a healthy way. And then we wonder why later down the line, every time we get angry, we shut down on people and we try to be positive. And now our spouse feels like they don't really know the real us because they never get to see how we actually feel because we're fluffing it over with positivity and being super nice and likable and trying to appease everyone. And ultimately that is going to impact not just your relationships, but it's also going to impact your mental health. It's going to impact your physical health. A lot of people don't realize that. Your emotional and mental health impacts your physical health. A lot of people are aware now that stress has a lot of impact on your health, but so does depression, so does anxiety, so does constant insecurities. Like all those things eventually come out in some way. You don't just swallow them and throw away the key. Like, it is going to come out somewhere. It's going to start impacting the way you move. It's going to start impacting the clarity of thought that you have. It's going to start impacting your confidence and how you show up at your workplace. And now we're talking about this dysfunction, which I mentioned and clarified for you guys a couple episodes ago. So it's important for us to be mindful of what habits, what tendencies we have now, and thinking about what does this look like a few years from now? What does this look like if I continue on this path? What consequences might, come up from this? Start thinking about that. And now coming back to the point about how to grieve those things. Once we've acknowledged them, once we've recognized like how it can manifest into something way worse than it is now, and we can see how it's going to cause us drifting further and further away from our calling, our values, our beliefs, the standards that we are being held to and should be holding ourselves to. Once we recognize that, here comes processing the grief about it. Here comes processing what to do next. Number one, Instead of quickly going to, this is a bad thing, shaming yourself and ridiculing yourself and trying to ignore it and just push it off, express, this is going to sound crazy, but express gratitude. With the examples I just gave, when it comes to being overly protective or selfish and cutting people off, and the examples of being super shy and reserved and not speaking up and allowing people to walk all over you, though, all that stuff, right? Grieve it, but also thank that version of yourself, because that version of yourself, as we just said, helped you to survive. So I am really big on imagery work. Visualize yourself literally sitting down with that old version of yourself, sitting down with all of that versions of yourself, habits, behaviors, tendencies, mentalities, mindsets, beliefs, and values, sitting down across the table from that version of you and saying, thank you so much for trying to, help me cope. Thank you so much for trying to help me be stronger and protect myself and survive. Thank you so much for all that you did at the time that you did it. However, now it is time for me to step into a new era and way of thinking, a new era and way of behaving. I no longer need to cut people off the moment they make a mistake, because not only do I have boundaries and more wisdom about boundaries, but I also know how to forgive better. That version of me didn't know how to forgive. This version of me knows how to forgive. This version of me knows how to not take things personal. This version of me knows how to choose better. I know how to filter better. I have discernment. Back then, I didn't have discernment. This version of me has discernment, so I don't have to cut everybody off. And this version of me knows how to take criticism and constructive feedback and to use it for my betterment, to use it for my growth and my development. That version of me may have felt like I had to be shy and quiet myself and silence myself. This version of me knows how to use this voice that God gave me and knows how to use it powerfully and wisely. Introduce that new version of yourself. Speak that new version over yourself. Saying goodbye, saying thank you, and, peace out. It's been real. It's been cool. Thank you for all that you did. We're moving on. Whether that has to be of actual, like you sit across from another chair and visualize that version of yourself, that little girl in you, that little boy in you, whomever, sitting there and processing that. Or maybe you write it out. And writing out can be anything. It doesn't have to be journaling. It could be writing a song. It could be, I write poetry all the time, so it could be poetry. It could be any type of form of art. As long as you're allowing yourself to write a line in the sand, thank that version for what it's done, how it contributed to who you are today, and say goodbye. And this is where showing up really takes center stage, because now we need to be intentional. Now we need to set boundaries. We love talking about setting boundaries with people, but when was the last time you set a boundary with yourself? When was the last time you set a boundary with your own unhealthy and maladaptive habits and behaviors? When was the last time you set a boundary with your negative and toxic mentality and mindset? Stop focusing on the boundaries with people. What about the boundaries with yourself and your own behaviors and your actions and tendencies that you need to change? So in this year of showing up, we're showing up with ourselves, to ourselves. We're telling ourselves, no, we're not going back to that. We're being intentional to not only just say that we're done, but now we're going to walk like that. We're going to walk that talk. We're going to actually act like we have said goodbye to that version of ourselves. What does that look like? That looks like you not running away every time change gets uncomfortable or every time newness feels uncertain. You have to stop running away. You have to stop tucking tail and turning back the other way. At some point, you're going to have to do it scared. I wish I could spend the rest of this podcast talking about all the ways to overcome fear, but that's not what you need today. You need to decide, I'm going to do it scared. I'm going to do it uncomfortable. I'm going to do it frustrated. I'm going to do it annoyed, and I'm going to do it uncertain, because at the end of the day, when my faith is in God, I know that he got me. I know that he's going to catch me if I slip up, if I fall. I know that he has my back. That's why you need an anchor that's actually going to anchor you. That's something in someone that is reliable, that has sustained you even through the worst days of your life when you were like, where is God? And now you can look back and see, oh, that's where you were. You were there. You were still holding me. You were right there in the midst of my pain and my turmoil, holding my hand, feeling it with me, and knowing that the end of this is going to be for glory. The end of this is going to be for healing. The end of this is going to be someone's unanswered prayer and a solution for it. Solution for their healing, a solution for the fear and the loneliness that they felt in their experiences. You are using it for your good. Maybe for you, you need the scriptures, you need the verses, you need the motivational quotes and all that. Maybe you need to decide and make up in your mind, boom, I'm just going to jump. Boom, I'm just going to go ahead and write the business plan. Boom, I'm just going to go ahead and book that therapy appointment. Boom, I'm just going to go ahead and break up with that person. Boom, I'm going to fill in the blank of whatever it is, whatever the changes that you need to do. And maybe it looks like a daily, it does look like a daily thing. If we're honest, it's a daily thing. When it comes to, like, for example, our mindset, that's a daily decision. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and say, oh, all right, I'm going to stop cutting people off. Because the next time somebody says something to you sideways and you don't know how to take it, you're going to be like, you know what? I'm going to fall back. I don't really need to talk to her today. And we'll start making excuses of, oh, I'm busy. I'm not cutting her off. I'm just busy. You're going to have to hold yourself accountable. Because no one else, no therapist, no psychologist, no preacher, no teacher can get in your own mind. Only you can do that. And because of that, you are the one who has to hold yourself accountable. You are the one that's going to have to get real nitty gritty honest with yourself and say, we said goodbye to that version of ourselves. Why are we starting to think like that again? Let me realign and remember what the goal was. You need to write that goal down so that you see it, so that you remember the focus. Because when it's out of sight, out of mind, that is a real thing. Out of sight, out of mind. Now you can pray, Lord, Holy Spirit, remind me, give me strength. Oh, Jesus, give me strength. And you also need to put in the work for yourself. Now that is my challenge for you guys this week. Put in the work to not only say goodbye to old versions of yourself and break up with those old versions of yourself, but to be intentional about maintaining that decision. A lot of times we see in the beginning of the year, everyone who wants to start being healthier, the gyms are flooded. By third, fourth month, no one's in the gym anymore. Because starting is never the problem. Maintaining it is a problem. Sticking with it when it starts feeling uncomfortable, when it starts getting old and it's not exciting anymore. You don't have a cheer team around you anymore. And it's just you versus you. I challenge you this week to want it enough for yourself. To think of yourself enough to, if you really knew how valuable you were to God, how valuable that you even get to watch this video right now, that you even get to breathe and see and hear and move and think. How valuable you are. You could have been a bird. You could have been a rock. You could have been a plant. But he made you in his image. He made you special. He anointed you and appointed you for a special time. And all that you have been through is going to matter, and it's going to be clear to you one day as someone who can speak, not just from trying to be motivational, encouraging, but I'm speaking it from existence. I'm speaking it from things that I've lived through and experienced. I know I got this baby face, but don't let it fool you. I can promise you, he got your back if you keep sticking it through. I promise you, you are so precious and valuable to him. I promise you, there is more for you. There is a healthier mindset. There is a healthier emotional state. There is healthier relationships. There is healthier ways of living life. There is healthier and better wealth and lifestyle available to you. You got to do that work, though. Everybody got to do the work. I got to do my work. You got to do your work. Let's all just get to work. All right? And I never have any pretty way to end these. So I'm just going to say peace out. I love y'all. And yeah, break up with your old version of yourself. And remember, faith helps. Peace out.